is Scott Suehle, and I am currently the community manager for Cumulus Linux, or Cumulus Networks. What we do is we produce a Linux distribution based on Debian Jessie, or Debian Wheezy currently, that runs on white box network hardware. So you can think of it as sort of the Red Hat for the networking world, or DDWRT for the enterprise world. We give you a full Linux console access to the hardware, giving you SSH access, Chef access, Puppet, Ansible, all those kind of favorite tools and things that you would do to use automation, DevOps, all those kind of good things. You can use from the top of your rack all the way down to the bottom. Just give a short little pitch about what Cumulus is. My talk today is going to be about open networking, and what that is there's a bunch of different things out there that people call open networking, and it's everything from software-defined networks to network feature virtualization to OpenStack, Neutron to Open Daylight, and a bunch of things you'll see when we get the slides up, if we ever do, that there's a lot of open networking pieces. And a lot of different companies have their own versions of it. If you were in the exhibit hall, you obviously saw the FBOSS wedge that they had out, and it's a stack of switches, and that's based on the Open Hardware Project and allowing people to get the granularity down to the hardware of what they want to be able to do in a completely open source way. And I'm going to talk some more about that with some of my other things, other slides that I have. But that's the gist of it for right this second. Let me go ahead and pull my slides up, and I can at least talk off of them. Oh, somebody's coming in the back with a cable. Looks promising. We have Ubuntu. Outstanding. I think this will get us. Thank you very much. Yes. again, as I was saying, um, I am the community manager from Cumulus Networks. I am a former customer support junkie. I've done customer support for about 7 years before I became a community manager. You can find me on a multitude of things. Obviously, my email address, my Scott S at Cumulus Networks. I'm 8-Bit Dad on the Twitters. Kilted One on Freenode. I'm in multitude of channels, but obviously you're going to find me in pound Cumulus Networks. So what we're going to talk about. So you can see my little attempt at being diagram over there with penguins all the way down, and the Cumulus Networks rack sitting on top. Is the fact focusing on what open networks is and what Linux's role in open networking is and how people can get involved, what's driving the market. So just going to give you a quick little history lesson. So in the beginning, we had early attempts to communicate. So your network administrators are your people who are doing the cave drawings, telling people, this is what can be found here, this is what we were tracking, this is what we were looking at. And your sysadmins are the hunters and gatherers who are going out, they're attacking, and they're gathering the things and bringing them in. And it's just early function areas of networking. Advancements, we go to the ancient Greeks, and you have the city-states, and they're trying to get information back and forth. So you have your network admins, which are intermediaries. These are the people who ran the city-states and wanted to get information back and forth across Greece. And your runners, and your marathoners, are going to be your sysadmins because they were running the data through the wastelands of Greece back then. We move forward, we have medieval expansion, and obviously things became more advanced with shipping routes, and the world became bigger, and network just had to get that much further. So you've got your captains and explorers who are doing the network management, and your merchants or your sysadmins sending the data through it. And then we got a little bit further in, and now we have telco companies, and the obviously you can see the I'm sorry, yeah, telegraph. Sorry, blink. But your method of data transfer becomes faster. You're seeing things happening much more quicker than shipping it out or somebody running it from point to point. And you've got your network admins of your telco companies and your sysadmins being the operators having to plug in all the different things and sending them the data across the globe. Computers were invented, and obviously things got a lot more crazy. Data could be done in a flash of a second, whereas it was taking days before, or even hours. And you can see as simple layers of the internet and how things came about. In 91, the content of the internet. 98, Google search engine, browsers in 93, World Wide Web in 1990, the internet itself in 75, and networks back all the way in 1973. Your network admins are born and your sysadmins are born because you have much more data and a lot more ways to transmit that information back and forth. So everybody knows what happened in the past, but it was great stuff. That's why they're called the good old days. But you got to review the history of where things were and where things were what they were doing, so that you're not doomed to make the same mistakes that people made in the past. Those who don't remember are the first people to repeat it. So let's take a look at where we are now. Obviously, with networking, you can't have a conversation without talking about Cisco. Cisco is the 800-pound gorilla in the networking environment. Everybody in the room probably has some Cisco device somewhere within their network infrastructure. If you don't, that's awesome, because that means you're not giving in to the Cisco behemoth. Let's just get a quick show of hands. How many people use something that's not Cisco in their current work environment? 1, 2, apprehensive, 3, maybe. That's awesome. But just so you know, Cisco has some open things. Their ONS for their Nexus lines are getting a little more open. They do have their Cisco One, which is their open network environment, and they have Cisco Viral, which is a virtual environment that you can sit down and play with and attach to different things and diagram a network out and go through things with it. OpenWRT, Tomato, DDWRT. I'd say probably, is everybody in the room familiar with what this technology is? This is your where you can flash the firmware on your home router and make it that much more accessible. You can be able to do much more things with the stock hardware that you buy off the shelf. And a lot of the companies nowadays are actually starting to advertise that they are currently able to run this stuff when you buy the router off the shelf. You can go to Best Buy now and you buy the latest D-Link router. That logo right there is on the side of the box. that says that you can go ahead and flash this firmware and run this software on your machine. And that is a huge leap from where it was 10 to 15 years ago when these things started coming out. The ability to say, you know what, we put this on here, but you go ahead and you upgrade that and you make it better. That is huge. Not a lot of companies are going to say that to you. So you look at this. This is just a stereotypical network stack. So over on your left, you have the closed down compute side. You know, you've got your Cisco, Juniper, Arista sitting at the top of the stack. Obviously, you know, you've got your servers and blades sitting in your rack. And these could be anything from Windows, Linux, you name it. And then on your right-hand side, you've got an open environment. And you've got a choice of hardware vendors. These are just a few that you can choose from. And the same hardware vendors that are there also provide networking gear. And that networking gear is wide open. It's a white box that you can just buy, put at the top of your rack, and you can put a choice of operating systems on it. I'm going to say Cumulus is greatest because, well, they pay me to say that. And that's what, you know, I put over there. But there's a bunch of different network operating systems that work out there as well. And it gives you a choice. And that's something that hasn't always been around. This is a little open networking cheat sheet. I'm going to say there's a lot of words on here. I don't expect you to read it all. My slides are going to be online later. You can take a look at them. But this is just a few of the networking things that you'll see that say open. As I was saying earlier, there's a lot of projects out there that deal with networking that use open in the name. So Open Daylight, OpenFlow, OpenStack, Open Compute Project, Open Contrail. We'll go into these a little more in depth. ONI. So let's start with ONI. ONI is the Open Network Install Environment. We had a guy who works for us that described ONI as Pixie that doesn't suck. But what ONI is basically it is a little piece of software that sits on the box, and when you boot it up, it says, all right, I'm looking for an OS. Is there one local? Is there one somewhere in the data center? Is there one on the internet? Where is it directing me to get this? And it goes out and it says, I want you to install this operating system. It pulls it down. It goes through a boot cycle, and it kickstarts the machine and loads it. And it's just like Pixie is for servers. This was written by an engineer for our company and then donated to the Open Compute Project. If you talk to the people who were in the Facebook booth in the exhibit hall, there was a bunch of people from the Open Compute Project in there as well. And what that is it's basically a project that comes together with a bunch of different companies backing it, and it says, we want to make hardware and software as open as possible and get it to as many people as possible and give them the ability to get down to the granularity of what the hardware and what the software does for them and what they can do with it. Open Daylight was started by the Linux Foundation. It's huge advancements for software-defined networking and network feature virtualization. They're trying to give a standard to the market, which is something that you don't have. I mean, you remember the chart that was just up there a few minutes ago? There's a lot of things. If we could get something where it was a complete standardization, it would help out a lot. Adoption rate on this is a little slow, but the list that has backed it is getting some big names. So expect to see more things out of that. Open Compute Project, as I was just stating, great project, great things are coming out of this, and it's only going to get better. More big names are signing on. You can see some of the big ones I put up here: Apple, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Fidelity, Microsoft, Rackspace, Facebook. All these people are getting in there and they're contributing to it, and that is huge. That is going to be big for the networking field in the next several years. This is just a screen barf of all the people that are contributing to the Open Compute Project, and you can see, I mean, huge names are there, including the one right in the middle, Cisco. So you can tell that this is something that even they see some credibility in and something that they need. OpenSwitch. This is a new thing that was launched at LinuxCon in Ireland this past fall. Started by HP. It's a community-based network operating system, and it's getting gaining some support. You can see HP, Acton, Broadcom, Intel, VMware. So some big names in the networking field are coming to it. They're trying to develop a fully open network operating system. And I'll talk to that a little bit more later when I talk to the Cumulus slide. But they're looking to try to get something out within the first half of 2016. Will it hit that soon? To be determined. But again, some huge things coming here. Cumulus Networks obviously is myself. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my own company. We're Debian based, currently based on Wheezy. Going to be going to Jesse at some point in time in the first quarter of this year. Um, Mostly open source, with the exception of one thing. If anybody's worked with networking utilities, Broadcom is not exactly one of those ones that wants to let go of what they're doing. So the SDK is not open source currently. Will that change? Time will tell. You saw them back on the open network systems with HP. Who knows? But we contribute a lot of software back to the Debian main project and also open source communities. IF Updown 2 is a huge one that's just now coming out. It's a rewrite of IF Updown in Python, which is it's being much more supported than the current IF Updown currently is. Quagga and VRF. But basically, it helps you make Linux the language common to your entire stack instead of just so you don't have a network operating system who's runs Cisco OS and then the rest of everything's Linux. You have this common language so your sysadmins and your network admins can talk back and forth. It makes it easier for them to be able to converse and talk about the networking. Dell Networking Operating System 10. This is a operating system by Dell that was sort of rolling behind, but they just made an announcement that they're going to put more tools behind it and start garnering a little more force behind it coming in this 2016. And they're going to add a premium layer 2 and layer 3 abstraction to that. Basically, the software abstraction infrastructure basically was just a little piece that would sit over top of the networking box, and it would allow you to talk back and forth. But there was still more underlying things. The premium layer, you're going to pay a little bit more to Dell for it, but it'll give you the full L2, L3 experience. Neutron obviously is OpenStack's version of networking. There are a lot of different companies out there that will talk to you about networking in OpenStack. Midakura, I mean, you name it. They're out there and they want to talk to you about it. But basically, it's an intermediary for the virtual NICs and OpenStack and other services to talk back and forth to one another, setting up your VMs and all that kind of good stuff. This is something that I expect to see some really cool things happen between now and April when OpenStack Summit happens in Austin. So I expect to see some pretty big things coming out of this far. Google Jupyter. Obviously, Google has a huge need and desire for a lot of bandwidth and a lot of networking power. So they said, you know what? None of these things are giving us what we want. They started their own. They built it from the ground up completely. And it's set up to handle both OS, hardware, and SDN needs that Google has within their data centers. And obviously, everybody knows there's a lot of data centers for Google to handle this. I don't know if anybody was in here who saw the Facebook Gluster talk yesterday, but it made me laugh that when they said, oh, we may lose a couple petabytes here and there. This is huge. A couple petabytes, they might lose data. Can't even fathom. But one of the new things is DevOps, all the things. If you were here on Friday for LA DevOps Days, that room was packed. And that speaks to what the future of DevOps is. I mean, a lot of people want to see more and more from the DevOps community and how to be able to handle that within their infrastructure. Open networking obviously lends a huge amount to that because it takes the DevOps tools that are currently available for your Linux and your server environment and applies it to the networking environment as well. We've done a couple meetups and webinars on Net DevOps, and it's garnering more and more support as it goes faster. The ability to automate things, the ability to have a common language in the data center. I mean, if you could think about it, if you have a data center of, say, 20 racks, and you make one mistake on one configuration on one switch, you lose a portion of your data center. With automation and then with the ability to have DevOps, you have a configuration file and it allows you to keep that human error down a little bit. Obviously, it'll still happen, but you want to be able to have that layer in there. Looking ahead, this was an article on MarketWatch talking about software-defined networking and network function virtualization. $45 billion business by 2020. And that's huge. And you know everybody's going to be standing up trying to figure out how they can get their part of it. I mean, you saw that even Cisco was involved with that because they realized that this is where the future's going. So, so what's next? Traction helps drive the innovation to companies, and that's what is wanted. And you never know what's possible until you ask. A lot of these companies, you never saw their involvement until somebody came up to them and said, you know what? We want something like this. And that's when they started going, maybe there is something more to offer there. So, how can I help and what can I do to help? How can I get involved? Well, that's a great thing. And coming to scale, you all know that there's a lot of different ways to get involved in open communities. First off, I'm going to talk about is GNS3. GNS3 is a project, and it's a company out there that allows for the setup of virtualization of networking systems. So you go and you grab their software, you grab your ISOs from Cisco or us or somebody else, and you can set up a virtualized network environment right there on your laptop with their software. And the ability to set that up and test it and see what it's going to look like is huge. The ability to say, go to somebody, you can go to a salesperson and say, here, I've virtualized what my network environment wants to, what I want it to look like. Build this for me. Make this happen. Huge. Ravello Systems is another one. This is a really cool setup that we've started using at work for our training and our consultants. Basically, it is you go online to their site, you sign up for it, you can build out your entire network infrastructure and spin it up on GCE or AWS and just go nuts with it. We've tested virtualization on it. We've tested demos on it. We've tested all kinds of stuff with it. We've done presentations with it, and it's huge, huge, huge. And it's got a lot of great tools. Podcasts in this community are obviously huge. I mean, I'm saying huge. Podcasting in the open source community, though, are a great resource. You know, you saw Bad Voltage here on Friday night, and you know, there's other podcasts that have been represented in the exhibit hall. But these are two networking ones that are very great to the keys to the community. They give you a lot of information, a lot of videos, a lot of communities to talk about for certifications, information, study groups, all those kind of good things, and it's all available at the fingertips. I'd be remiss if not saying my own community. This is the one I've built for the last year, and it is building steam every day. We've got a lot of great customers that have been a part of it. We've got a lot of people who have been interested in Cumulus who've come and asked a lot of great questions as well. And you come to our community, you ask a question, you may get an answer from somebody who's done it with being a customer, but you may also get the engineer who wrote the piece of software you're asking a question about. Our engineers are in there, our consultants are in there, I'm in there, a lot of technical resources, and a lot of great people are behind this one. OCP, I've talked about that one already, but they've got a lot of great resources and places to get involved. Obviously, the top link there is to get involved with the OCP. And they are always looking for people to be part of them as well, whether it be companies, individuals, engineers, whatever. They like help. ONI, there's the GitHub for the ONI project. Obviously, it again is under the umbrella of the OCP, but still, they have a lot of development that goes into this, whether it be helping develop the code or getting information out about it. You have your own open source projects that you love. Open source, whether it be cookbooks, playbooks, manifests, you name it. If you have something that can benefit the networking community, open source it, get it out there, and talk about it. Show people what it is. Let them know how they can get involved with you. The more you talk and the more you get people energized about what you're doing and show them what it is, the more they're going to be enthusiastic about getting involved with you and helping you out. Meetups and user groups, again, these are great resources to the communities as well. I know just in this area there is a lot of communities that are dedicated to the networking spot and also to the DevOps spots and all these other things. And with a minimal, involvement of, hey, you come out and have a slice of pizza and a beverage with them, they'll be glad to talk to you about anything. But it just gives you more opportunities to get involved. But yeah, involvement doesn't always involve just yourself and your time. Talk to your companies. If there's some great project out there that you're using at work and you think that it's worthwhile to talk to your bosses and say, hey, maybe we should, get behind this project a little more from the company standpoint, projects love that even more because that's what allows them to continue on. People resources is awesome, but the ability to continue making that resource, whether it's an open source project, takes funding too. If everybody remembers the thing that happened with GPG a while back, um, and it was down to one guy, and that the reason why he hadn't gotten to fix the project was because he ran out of funds and ran out of time by himself. And when that happened and when it hit, he got flooded with donations from companies and individuals and people to help him make this and make it work. And that goes a long way in the open source community. But let me leave you this one last thing. Get out there and start a network revolution. Because the only way that things get broken up like Cisco is because somebody is out there talking about it and doing something with something else that's not a proprietary or a single vendor device. That's it. Any questions? Any questions? Yes. I'm sorry? Yes. Correct. There's a little bit of different choices out there, but Broadcom is mostly the merchant silicon that's doing the networking call for the devices. Um, your switches currently are going to be either PowerPC based or Intel x86 based as far as the chip processor goes, but your networking hardware is still mostly Broadcom. They are not the only option as far as that goes, but they are the best. A lot of years and a lot of involvement with them has made them the leader in that field. And again, much like I said, it's hard to break somebody's single point of control when there's not a lot of talk about the alternative. Um, but yeah, there are alternatives, but they are woefully behind in that realm. Uh, but yeah, so I guess as I was saying, there are Intel-based chips, and there are going to be Arch builds coming out with the next generation. So hopefully soon we will see something that will come about. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, you got more? Um, I will say I'm not hugely familiar with ITF, um, but that's not to say that it's not being involved with a lot of these projects. Um, that would be something more. I would need to look into it a little bit more. I apologize that I'm not, completely up to date with all of them. But yeah, but it's something I would definitely like to look into and find out more. Yeah, thank you. All right, thanks everybody.